For the team so far, João Nicolau. Saw the national flag of Uruguay on the side of the road. They have Guilherme Silva. He rides for the Carral team, and he is their national champion. We've seen that flag a few times on the side of the road. They also have Eric Fogendes, who rides for the Burgos team. So 2 riders in the race from Uruguay.
What's really important for these 3 riders out in the breakaway is they align their interest in how they're going to go about taking on the peloton in the stage. There's no good if you have one rider out there that wants to really drive the pace and the other 2 that want to take it easy. You often have one rider in a breakaway, even up to a dozen riders, who will be nearly a bit of a captain of the breakaway, who really dictate the pace and talk to the other riders in the break about what tactic they need to employ to potentially hold off the chasing bunch.
2 teams leading the chase in here. It is Israel Premier Tech in the blue colours, followed then by Alpecin-Deceuninck. Next in line, you see the white and blue colours of Bahrain Victorious. They're riding very close to the front, but they do not need to do any of the work today.
Well, with 3 riders up the road who are all significantly down on the general classification and a rare chance for the sprinters in today's stage, Bahrain Victorious can afford to gamble a little bit, sit a little bit further back in the group and allow the teams that are really targeting the sprint stages to take control.
Your thoughts on their performance yesterday, Bahrain Victorious?
Outstanding, and I was very, very impressed with Jack Haig. He really looks like he's relishing the opportunity to step up as the road captain of the squad, really take control of the team. We heard him over the radio, over the TV coverage, really calling the shots on the road, Mitch.
Yeah, well, the race really exploded on the first category climb out of the holes yesterday. Port de Canto, and we expected that. But the thing that I loved about what the team did is, yes, they were able to get Jack Haig around the Torsten Truhn there, over the top, settle things down. But then what they did then, the next step was really important, is they slowed it down and they waited for their other riders to get back in, and then they regained the complete control. They held the gap at around 4 minutes. They didn't try and bring it straight back. It's great control, really mature from the whole team.
So Bahrain Victorious is really good as a squad, but I was super, super impressed with Torsten Truhn. I thought he was doing a little bit too much work early on. He was actually jumping after a few of the attacks himself, so I thought, oh, he's maybe a little bit nervous here. First time leading a Grand Tour. He's a bit too active, but once he had the experience around him, and particularly Jack Haig, he settled back in. He was good with his team, and he was extremely strong on the finish climb.
He has talked himself down more than anybody in the media. The media's been talking him up. He's been talking himself down.
Yeah, he has. He seems very humble at the finish line, and he's as you said, mate, he's talking himself down, and I think he's a little bit in disbelief the fact that he is going toe-to-toe with the big pre-race favourites.
He's 30 years of age, but he's had some challenges. We've spoken about it already with battling testicular cancer. But at 30 years of age, what can this do to his career, to the next phase of his career? A stint in the leader's jersey at the Vuelta.
Well, it's not only just grabbing, I think the stint is the right word. It's not just wearing the jersey for a day. It's what he did yesterday. I think he's at that prime of his career now where he's coming into the perfect form to showcase this, and he's going to be able to launch that into the next phase financially, but also the mentality around him and his ability. He's coming to that point where he's got the Ks in the legs, he knows what he can do, and now it's time to really capitalise on those years.
He'll absolutely take so much confidence out of the way he's riding in this Vuelta a España and take that to future races. And I think the team will give him more responsibility as well off the back of his ride so far here. Undoubtedly for me, there'll be some number of riders who are targeting a top 10 in this Vuelta a España who'd be thinking, oh, maybe we shouldn't have given this guy so much lead a couple of days ago. He's got 2.5 minutes advantage over Jonas Vingegaard, and he's looking really comfortable in that position as well.
Although he's much older than Ben Healy, could he be the Ben Healy of this year's Vuelta a España and get a top 10 finish in the general classification? Ben Healy wasn't expected to do so initially at the Tour de France, but once he got the stint in yellow, he fought and held on to a spot in the top 10.
Could he be the Ben O'Connor? That's what I was thinking. You know, the really just... We shouldn't have let him get the jersey type feel.
I think he needed 10 minutes, not 2 minutes, that stage into Andorra to pull off what Ben O'Connor did in the Vuelta a España last year. But for Torsten Truhn, I think he will lose the red jersey at some stage throughout this Vuelta. But what's actually playing into his favour? his two team leaders at Bahrain Victorious in Santiago Buitrago and Antonio Tiberi aren't looking that flash. So he's going to get full support of the team in his quest to hang on to a high spot in the GC.
Yeah, they both had bad days yesterday, which simplifies the race for the race leader. Here's a look at the breakaway group once again. The rider from Cajarral, this is Jean Bao. He has made plenty of appearances in the Volta already throughout his career.
It was a couple of years ago in the Volta a España. It was actually in 2022 that he was frequently in the breakaway. A little bit quiet. I don't think he raced the Volta in 2023, and a little bit quieter last year, but he's a name that we're very familiar with.
Well, he's known more for his climbing abilities and his breakaway abilities. He started out at the Alberto Contador development squad. He spent a bit of time started his career in Italy with the Nippo Fantini club, and then he went back into the Basque region and went with Euskaltel. So, look, he's had a really good start to his career, and now he's with the Cajarral team. Probably ready to make that next step up, but he needs the result to sort of back that up.
It was with the Euskaltel team in 2019. He made his first appearance in the Volta a España, and he got himself in 5, maybe even 6 breakaways, and he ended up finishing in 3rd position in the King of the Mountains classification that year. Current leader of the King of the Mountains classification, that is Jay Vine. He's on 34 points. Next best is Louis Vervaeke on 23 points. It's then Juan Ayuso on 20 points. Very simple day today for Jay Vine. There are no climbs at all, so nobody can take points off him.
No, it does simplify things for the King of the Mountain competition when there are no classified climbs on the stage. In fact, it can make a stage like this really hard to get through because you have really nothing to focus your efforts on. All you're doing is trying to conserve energy and watch the kilometres pass by. A stage like this can be a bit easier if there are a couple of significant points throughout the stage that you use to sort of break up the distance.
I personally love these stages, I have to admit, when nothing happened. And you're like, finally, I can just sit back, relax, I can have a chat to someone I haven't spoken to. I always remember there was half the peloton that hated these stages and other half that loved them. People just wanted to get in there and race. I don't think these happen that often anymore, where there's a bit of almost like a truce, and it's pretty known what's going to happen in the race with the sprint at the end. Not many sprint stages here, so the sprint teams really want to capitalise on this and make sure a breakaway doesn't get away with it.
Mitch, I do recall racing stages like this in the Volta a España when we were teammates and we had Neil Stevens as our sports director. He'd still give everybody a goal on a stage like this. It's like, OK, boys, who can burn the least calories today? That's your competition for the day. So he'd still have a goal for you in mind.
Yeah, but that's a really good way of setting up an objective to give yourself some structure and knowing that that is going to help you then in the next days where you are a chance to really participate in the race. And if you're a team that doesn't have a sprinter, and Jayco Alula, your old team, the Green Edge team, they don't have a genuine sprinter in the stage today. So their big focus is on protecting Ben O'Connor and burning as little fuel as possible. How does a team like Jayco Alula approach today?
Well, they should be sitting around each other and protecting, exactly what you said, protecting Ben O'Connor, making sure that little bit of crosswind isn't eating away at him all day long, even though you won't notice it and you'll feel like, oh, it's okay, I can just sit out here in the wind. That's when you're pushing an extra 20 or 30 watts you don't need to be doing. So you need to be sitting on the right side of the wheel, riders going back, getting bottles for him, making sure he's getting really hydrated, making up for the days before that he may have gotten slightly dehydrated, making sure he's really fueling well, that when he finishes the stage, he's feeling the muscles are really, refueled, ready for tomorrow.
He looked quite good yesterday, Ben O'Connor. At the back of the race, the Lotto team. This is Jonas Kregar. Their big role today is to look after Alia Viviani. And Simon, for the first time, we're seeing the ice stockings used. It's the hottest day of the race thus far.
Yeah, hot, open and exposed with a little bit of wind in today's stage. So a very different approach to what the riders really had in the mountains over the past few days. No rain on the horizon today's stage, so that'll be a welcome surprise for the riders too. Particularly that stage into Andorra 2 days ago, you could see rain jackets on, rain jackets off. They were constantly riding through adverse weather conditions.
This is Jan Hurt on the front for Israel Premier Tech, and looking at his hand position on the bike, he's sitting on the tops of the bars. This is not a chase, this is a maintaining the gap to the 3 leaders. Looks like a Sunday stroll on a Saturday afternoon. And we're seeing Bahrain Victorious at the front, but the red jersey's not there. He's either had a nature break or he's had some sort of a mechanical problem, or he's sitting further back in the peloton, getting more protection.
Well, that's a smart move by Torsten Tran because there's no need for him to be at the very front of the peloton. And often you find, particularly in conditions like this, when you do have a bit of a headwind, if you were in the first 10 positions in the peloton, you are putting out significantly more power than the riders who are sitting a little bit further back in the bunch. So for Torsten Tran, he's going to be further back in the group. He'll still have a teammate or two around him in the case that he has a bit of a mishap, has a mechanical issue, or if there's a crash, or he needs to get to the front really quickly. They'll be there to assist him do that.
There's a green jersey, Mads Pedersen. Huge performance yesterday in the breakaway to pick up 20 points in the race for green.
Yeah, he's looking really fit. He's looking really fit and lean. I know everyone here is very, excuse me, everyone here obviously is very fit and lean, but for a sprinter like Mads Pedersen, he is looking particularly lean for me. He looks a little bit smaller, and that's why I think he's handling those climbs a lot easier. Remember, that was full gas yesterday at the top of that climb. The first person to get across the 1 Ayuso at the top of the climb, Mads Pedersen.
So what price has he paid in his sprint to be climbing so well?
Yeah, a little bit, I think. And I think we've seen that already in the bunch sprints, not only just here, but over the duration of this year. It's slightly less. He's taken a different tact. He's realised, hey, I can win races another way.
Well, for me, for Mads Pedersen, the fact that he was in the front group over the top of the first Category 1 climb in yesterday's stage shows he's obviously in really good shape, shows he's climbing exceptionally well. But let's not forget, everyone was on their absolute limit on that climb, and it was a natural selection to what group you ended up in. So Mads Pedersen probably wasn't using any more energy at that point in time than the rest of the sprinters. He's just climbing better than them. Where he did use a lot more energy was following that first classified climb when he ended up in a breakaway of a dozen riders, because he didn't miss a tap in that breakaway. He was going through, he was pulling turns in the valley, keeping the pace high. He was pushing the pace on each of the descents as well. So Mads Pedersen used up a lot of energy in the middle of the stage until he got to that intermediate sprint at the base of the final climb, and then he sat up. I do think he will pay the price for that effort throughout yesterday's stage, but fortunately for Pedersen, it's been a nice easy start today. He's sitting on the wheels. He's recovering right now from his big effort yesterday.
Well, it's a local man here. Sergio Samita from Cofidis here. He's about to ride through his hometown in about 16 kilometres. This is awesome. Yeah, imagine what he would be feeling right now, making the breakaway. He wanted to get in the breakaway. He was riding on Movistar last year. He's known for going in the breakaways, actually, and he made the change late in the season across to Cofidis. These would be local training roads. He'd be coming back through, be like, oh, I know this bit here. It's about, 15 minutes back to home. I remember that bit there. I had a puncher one time. So this is all those old roads that you're used to. How cool's this? Look, that'd be exciting. I'd love to be out there. If I was in the breakaway on my home stage, it'd be frothing.
Average speed so far is not that, though. It's 37 kilometres per hour. It is below the expected minimum average speed of the stage today, but that will pick up towards the back end of the stage. One of Cementier's teammates, Brian Cocker, he spoke before the stage got underway, and he said that Sergio knows this stage like the back of his hand, and he will do all he can to get in the breakaway because his fans are excited, and nobody wants to let their fans down.
Well, he's probably used to riding these roads faster than he is in today's stage. He probably trains faster than this at this 37 kilometres an hour.
Well, he's going to go. We're going right through the town centre of Usko here, coming up, which is where he lives, so that'll be cool. Everyone will be out in the town. I can't wait to see that.
Number 75, that is Edward Plancard. Number 76 is Jonas Ricard. Them, along with Oscar Riesbeek, they're the three most important riders to set up the sprint for their fast finisher, which is Jasper Philipsen. Jonas Vingegaard looked good yesterday. He didn't have any problems dealing with the attack of João Almeida. He hasn't conceded any ground. He hasn't taken any big chunks of ground. I imagine he'll be happy with the current situation of the race.
I imagine so too. And look, there's quite a few things yesterday that were, for me, a little bit unexplained. Teammate of Jonas Vingegaard there, Sepp Kuss, when he did get back on, he brought Egan Bernal back across that front group, and then he launched his own attack. Later on, we saw Marc Soler do a great move for João Almeida to set him up, but then in the final kilometres, launch an attack of his own and gain 5 seconds. So a couple of interesting moves there yesterday by super domestics. Whether that was playing into the hands of the other teams, making them chase, I don't know. I'd be interested to hear what you guys thought about those attacks from the teammates.
Well, really typical of Marc Soler. You think he's done a turn, you think he's dead, but he's like the Terminator. He just keeps coming back, Marc Soler. And for me, it was no big surprise that he attacked. He only needs a slight lull in the pace to inspire himself to go off the front and have a go. I was a little bit more surprised by the counter move of Sepp Kuss. And you could see when Vingegaard, I think he got away there with Almeida and Ciccone, so the three big favourites for the general classification here, had just snuck off the front. Sepp Kuss was caught a little bit further behind with Egan Bernal, and it looked like he actually closed the gap back to the front of the race with Bernal on his wheel. So I thought that may have been a bit of a mistake for Sepp Kuss, but he was obviously feeling pretty good, because as soon as he rejoined Vingegaard in the front, he went straight to the top and went on the attack.
As we see the breakaway group of three building out to their maximum lead of 3:44, the conversation around Sepp Kuss and the role that he played yesterday, I've put some thought into it as well, as I had a bit of spare time this afternoon, and came to the conclusion that Visma Leasebike, he actually got on the radio and he spoke back to the team car. Visma Leasebike are not concerned about Egan Bernal. If they're enabling or allowing Sepp Kuss to close that gap down, they were putting more into having a teammate there for Jonas Vingegaard than concerned about bringing Egan Bernal back. They wanted a teammate for Jonas, and they're not worried long term about Egan Bernal, which is a risk because he's been a winner of the Tour de France and the Giro d'Italia.
But if you think if Sepp Kuss had come back, he would have been better off just getting on the front and keeping the pace high to keep that front group really small, because in the end of yesterday's stage, it ended up being a mini bunch sprint of the best GC riders, because the group swelled to well over a dozen riders by the time they got to the finish line.
Yeah, it was 24 riders at the finish line, and it was Tom Pidcock who led them across the line. The good news for Visma Leasebike is they had three in the group. In addition to Jonas Vingegaard, they had the two Americans, Sepp Kuss and Matteo Jorgensen. It is a headwind throughout the early portion of the stage. The leading group of three out to an advantage at 3 minutes and 50 seconds. They're heading towards Zaragoza. When they get closer to town, it's anticipated there'll be some crosswinds and tension in the peloton.
We're looking for two boys, and I think those boys stumbled across a monster.
Dark Winds, stream free on SBS On Demand.
All of us,
especially together,
are better. Not because we are the
same,
but because we are all different.
Stage 8 of the Volta a España. It is 112 kilometres to go. It's a breakaway group of 3 out in front, and they went off the front of the peloton right at kilometre 0 on a stage of 163.5 kilometres. Out in front for the Caja team, it is John Bowe. In the move for Cofidis, it's Sergio Samitier. He's the local rider enjoying a day out on his training roads. And rounding out the group for the Burgos team, it is Jose Luis Fuera, who is in his first ever Volta a España. A rider who has had some good results in the past. He's managed to finish in 4th place in the Tour of Langkawi, but this is the first time that we've seen him off the front in his first participation in the Volta. That will give him some confidence.
Well, he's not going to be struggling with the heat today. Coming from down in the south in the Murcia area, he's going to be comfortable, loving life out there today. Sun beating down on his back.
Victor Campenaerts is back where it all started. This was the first World Tour team that he rode for. He's been off in his adventures out where he's been a stage winner at the Giro, a stage winner at the Tour. And he plays a really important role in the team for the morale on the bus and at the dinner table.
Well, that is important. Look, I've never been a teammate with Victor Campenaerts. I can imagine he's a funny guy, but it is one of the things that really interesting, Matt, you point that out, because, look, we're 7 days in now. You know, the shine of the Grand Tour's wearing off, if not worn off, especially after the yesterday's stage. And now you're just in the meat of the Tour. It's hard. It's pretty hard now. You're not quite at that first rest day. And even after you do that first rest day, personally, that's when I found it the hardest. The first or second day after the rest day, still a long way to the end of the race. You're not really seeing the light at the end of the tunnel yet you're so fatigued. I certainly was anyway.
So you're right in the depths of it.
You're right in the depths of it. So they're getting close to that now. And a day like today, yes, it is easy, but you're in the sun all day. You've got tired legs. So rewinding back to Victor Campenaerts, what's really important is when you step into that bus, when you get to that dinner table, you bring that morale up. You get everyone's heads up. You don't sort of talk about the low points or the annoying bits or whatever. Maybe you joke about them for a minute, but you want to have a bit of fun and you want to sort of forget about the race for a minute and just, you know, get the morale back up.
Do you think it will have been a struggle at the Lido Trek team to maintain their morale? Because they've done a lot of chasing in this race. They've had 2 second-place finishes. They've had a 3rd. Today, they've decided not to contribute to the chasing.
I don't think so if there's a good ambience or good culture within the team. And I've been part of some great winning teams, and I've been part of teams that had really long dry patches of results as well. And the morale is obviously it's influenced by the results of the team, but what has more influence on the morale is the camaraderie that you have with your teammates. So you may be getting an absolute belting in a Grand Tour, but if you're there and you have riders like Victor Campenaerts who tends to uplift the mood of the team, you sort of bounce through each and every day, getting along really well with one another.
And Mads Pedersen, can he win today? He's not the favourite to win today. He hasn't won a genuine bunch sprint finish since June of last year.
I think if there was going to be a day, a normal sprint day, today maybe will suit him because the team isn't riding. I feel like they fly under the radar a little bit, have a little bit more resources when it comes to that final lead out, and maybe the pressure's slightly off a little bit. You know what? This isn't for me today. I was up the road all day yesterday. We're not riding the front. Clearly, we're not really going for it. Yeah, sure, I'll be around in the sprint. Next thing you know, he's right up there.
Well, funnily enough for me, I think Mads Pedersen can win today if Alpecin Deceuninck lose, because it's absolutely their stage to lose. They have the out-and-out favourite for this stage in Jesper Philipsen. He has the strongest lead-out team in the race, so they have to get it seriously wrong for Mads Pedersen to get the better of them. Mads Pedersen, he will be around the mark. I absolutely put him in the top 5 every time on a finish like this, but he hasn't shown that pure speed for quite some time to win a pure bunch sprint like today should be.
Yeah, there's no question. Alpecin Deceuninck, they have the best lead-out train in this race for sure. Mads Pedersen is good, but for Jesper Philipsen, it is elite. The red jersey has arrived at the front, Torsten Thrun. Looked like he enjoyed his day yesterday because it was a real fight to hold on to the red jersey. It wasn't a stage where he could just cruise on through.
No, it wasn't. And look, they really wanted to hang on to that jersey. That was their big goal yesterday, go all in to hang on to the red jersey. And actually, they did it. Look, here's me saying it from the couch. They did it pretty easily. I don't think they were really on their hands and knees and you know, counting down the clock. He was in the bunch. the leaders group comfortably, and he handled it well. The team handled it well.
They managed the time gap to the breakaway perfectly.
Well, they certainly did, because they allowed that breakaway that's up the road of a dozen riders to establish a time gap of around about 4 minutes. So that meant it would have been a big chase from any other climbing teams in the race to bring that breakaway back again to contest the stage victory. So for the general classification riders sitting back in the bunch, they weren't thinking about the stage win. They were thinking about conserving their spot on the GC. So that took one element of pressure away from Bahrain Victorious. So by the breakaway being off the front, all they had to do was conserve that gap and really look after Torsten Thrun.
Rejoin the breakaway group. The rider from Cajaral who sets the pace at the front. This is Joan Bao. In the red colours, it is Sergio Sametier, and in the pinkish colours for Burgos, the rider who sits at the back, that is Jose Luis Fuera. The best placed rider in the general classification is the man coming through to the front now. He is at 8 minutes and 56 seconds down. Bahrain Victorious could not ask for a better situation in the stage today.
No, it's perfect. It was always, I think it was always going to be like this on a flat day, that the sprinting teams, and we mentioned it before, only a handful of sprint stages in this Vuelta a España, pure sprint stages that is. So they knew they were always going to get helping hand from Alpecin de Koenig, you know, maybe from Trek, which haven't come up the front yet, or maybe they won't, but also for Israel Premier Tech, because Ethan Vernon, let's talk about him for a minute. This is a rider who has shown some great form in the earlier sprint. It's great to see him there. He's coming back. There was the question around, are they going to be sprinting for Jake Stewart or Ethan Vernon? Speaking with the sports director there, Darryl Impey, who's driving in the car behind, he gave us the indication that, look, there'll be some stages for Vernon, there'll be some stages for Stewart, and the stage that Vernon, he has competed in, have been very, very good.
He is a real chance. This is just on the outskirts of Huesca. This is around about 10 minutes drive away from Huesca. This old castle that's been listed as a national monument since 1931. Throughout its period, it became one of the most powerful buildings, one of the most powerful abbeys in the kingdom and the crown of Aragon, which is the region that they're now going through. Dates back to the Middle Ages, around about the 11th or 12th century. Well, the headwind is turning into a head crosswind.
Well, they're up to change direction a little bit in around 6 kilometres time. So when they get into the town of Huesca, they will swing to the left, and this sort of cross headwind will become more of a pure crosswind and potentially even a slight cross tailwind as they near Zaragoza. That's why I think we see Torsten Thrun moving up towards the front onto the wheels of his teammates who are in the first line of riders.
Here's a look at the castle from another angle. It's now owned by the municipality. I can't imagine that you're able to visit it given the state that it's in. It looks like it's fragile.
I think you'd want a hard hat on.
You definitely would. Not sure the safety vest would do you much good, but the hard hat, I would recommend that. They're working really hard out in front. They're not playing the game of cat and mouse any longer with the peloton. It looks like they are starting to see if they can up the tempo and increase their advantage.
Yeah, they're pulling pretty strong turns out there. They're not mucking around. I don't really feel like they need to do that just yet. With 105 kilometres to go, they could play around a little bit more. The peloton certainly don't want them back. They're happy with this scenario. So they're only going to ride as fast as the breakaway ride. So the peloton's decided that they're going to keep them around that 3-minute, 30, 4-minute gap. So if they go faster, the peloton will go faster. If they go slower, the peloton will go slower. So if it was me, I'd be going slower in the front.
Well, Jan Hurt would be happy with that. He's the rider at the front for the Israel Premier Tech team. He's a teammate of Ethan Vernon, who you just spoke about. And Ethan Vernon, a couple of days ago, we saw his compatriot, his good friend Ben Turner, get the victory. That will give Ethan Vernon the belief that he too can take a win.
Oh, he was emotional at the finish, wasn't he? You could see how much it meant to him, that victory. And it was a great victory. You know, if you're going to get a stage in a Grand Tour, that's the way you want to do it, coming over the top of Jasper Philipsen, and he timed it to perfection, showing his strength in that kind of sprint. Today, look, there is a bit of an uphill drag today. Is it hard enough? I don't think so, but look, don't count him out. That confidence could go so far, and you know, he's got it. He's obviously quick, and you just need that right run like he did when he got his stage a few days ago.
It will certainly give him a lot of confidence, and important to the hopes of Ben Turner today is the lead out from Mikhail Kwiatkowski. He can't deliver a pure sprint lead out, but he has got the class, he's got the horsepower. He'll do what he did a couple of days ago and put Ben Turner in the right spot coming under the kilometre marker.
Well, I think that right spot will be on the wheel of Jasper Philipsen, and I think there'll be a big battle amongst the other sprinters in the race to get onto the wheel of Philipsen, and then ultimately they've got to gamble a little bit from there. They've got to jump before him, maybe try and block him in on the wheel of his teammate, hamper his sprinting in some way, shape or form, and try and get the jump on him and get up the road. Philipsen has the fastest turner speed of anybody in this peloton. He nearly has the fastest speed of anybody in any Pro Tour World Tour peloton, in fact. So it's going to be a challenge for the other sort of quick guys in this race to get the better of him. But Ben Turner, as you mentioned, off the back of a recent victory, he's going to be brimming with confidence.
I'm sure you're right about the fight for the wheel of Jasper Philipsen. That is going to be the big battle. A lot of the sprinters will be basing themselves on Jasper Philipsen. And one of them is the Estonian national champion from EF Education Easy Post, Madis Mikkels. He has said, I don't have much of a lead-out train, so I need to work off the other trains. I need to go freelancing.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. He's got no riders really in that group to drop him off. And, you know, knowing the way they're going to do that, he's just going to get dropped off by a rider inside the last couple of kilometres, and he'll float from there and find his own way. Look at the Australian sprinter, Robbie McEwen, was very good at doing that. Even Caleb Ewan, he was very good off the lead out as well, Caleb, but actually he could float on his own. It's a skill that not every sprinter is able to do.
It seems to be a skill that belongs to the smaller sprinters. You've mentioned McEwen and Caleb Ewan. Mark Cavendish, although he had many great lead-out trains, he was also very capable of it.
Oh, he was very capable of it. And you look, that's the sign of a great sprinter, someone who can do either or. A guy like Brian Cockard is good in the wheels. Doesn't necessarily go very well off a big lead out. A guy like Marcel Kittel, great off the lead out. Actually, Kittel, that's probably not a great example because really he just stepped out wherever he was and sprinted around everyone.
And I was going to actually say, has Brian Cockard ever had a big lead out? He's always just snivelling his way through the wheels. He's never really been a part of a big, strong lead out team. So he's never really had the luxury of following two or three of his teammates to the front of the peloton. No,
I've never seen it happen for him. He has always fed off others. He rides as the track cyclist that he is. Here's a look at the lineup for Jasper Philipsen. It is Tobias Bay. He's doing the pacemaking at the front for them right now. Rasmus de Bruyne, and is then Gal Glivar. He's trying to get into the breakaways in the mountains. Edward Plankard is the #1 lead-out rider. He's the last guy to drop Philipsen off. Before that is Jonas Rickard. Before that is Oscar Riesbeek. And Luca Vergelotto is unfortunately no longer in the race for Alpecin Koenig. Here's another one of the lead-out riders. This is Søren Kragh Andersen, the Danish national champion. He'll be delivering the lead-out for the other big Dane, the green jersey, Mads Pedersen.
I have to say this, I've been a little bit underwhelmed by Søren Kragh Andersen so far in this race. He is a rider with a heap of long, sustained power. I've seen him do it before when he was riding on the Picnic NL Post team, which was at the time Sunweb, yep, exactly. Changed names so often, that team. And when he was on Sunweb, he was sprinting for himself there and also doing lead-outs. Very, very long sprints. He would go early, yet he could sustain that speed for so long. And a couple of times I've expected him to produce that for Mads Pedersen, but for whatever reason he hasn't been able to, got caught up or whatever. Today could be the day.
Watch this space for the lead-out Trek team, and we've seen Andrea Baggioli. He's done a great job in the mountains supporting Giulio Ciccone. He's also a pretty handy part of the lead-out train, and they also have the big Dutch time trial champion Dan Hula. Breakaway, Cimetière, home roads for him today. He's the rider at the front. A great occasion. It's going to be tough to decide who gets the most combative from the three out in front.
Well, unfortunately, this breakaway was formed before the coverage started, so we didn't see who was the first rider to go on the attack. Normally, that has a big influence on who is awarded the most combative of the day. And another big influence is who stays out there the longest, so who is the last rider caught.
Well, they're inspired now as they make their way through the historic Spanish city of Huesca. This is a town that has a history dating back its origins some 6 55,000 years. A population of 55,000, and one of the riders in the race is part of that 55,000.
You can hear the crowd yelling out to him. Look, the region around here, and as they get closer to Zaragoza, it's over 200,000 years of history there. It's just, it dates back so far, and that's the thing you take on for granted when you're around these regions. You're just seeing this stuff, even living in ridiculously old buildings, and just the history is embedded in these regions.
Here's a chance to take a look at the cathedral, the Huesca Cathedral. It's located in the old part of the city, not surprisingly, and its construction got underway in the 11th century, and it took until the 16th century for it to be completed. Might get a chance at some point to take a look at the famous bull ring in Huesca. That was a bull ring that opened up in 1764. Back down with the peloton, and they're starting to claw back the advantage of the breakaway, making sure that it doesn't get out of hand, trying to get it back to the 3-minute marker.
I don't anticipate this breakaway will get out of hand. The 3 riders in the front are known for their breakaway capabilities, but I think when the roads are a little bit more up and down, twisting and turning, this kind of breakaway today is more suited to, you know, if we had, say, a Filippo Ganna or someone out there, you might be getting a little bit concerned. Oh, okay, Ganna, Bruno Amorai, you know, if that combination was together.
Having spent so long out on open roads without any spectators by the side of the road and lonely looking roads, great for a break psychologically to come through town.
Oh, absolutely. These guys will be riding through here with goosebumps. To see so many people on the roadside cheering them through. As you mentioned, Matt, 55,000 people in this village, and it looks like they're all on the roadside to cheer this breakaway through town.
And they've come to the side of the road, and they're +1. Now the peloton still being led by Jan Hurt from the Israel Premier Tech team. Next in line is Tobias Bayer from Alpecin Koenig. Medium density housing in the middle of Huesca. As I mentioned before, a city whose origins date back some 6,000 years.
It's so interesting. As a rider, you ride through a town like this and you are completely oblivious to your surrounds, the historical buildings, the history of villages like this.
No classified climbs on the stage today. The intermediate sprint, that is at 42.5 kilometres to go. So still a long way before they get there, close to some 55 kilometres away. In addition to the spectators on the side of the road, so to hear the cheering, they also get a moment's reprieve in the shade.
Well, the temperatures are climbing throughout today's stage. As they get it down to Zaragoza, it looks like a maximum temperature in the low 30s, but you really feel that temperature being so open and exposed.
At the back of the race, number 14, that's Matteo Jorgensen. He's the protected rider. He's returning from either a mechanical problem or a nature break. And it is Victor Campenaerts who is doing the job for him. And these two have combined brilliantly this season, with Victor Campenaerts' vlogs and the facts of the day coming from Matteo Jorgensen. They've been a lot of fun. And one of them also including some commentary around Jan Ullrich and putting a jar of Nutella in the microwave so he could drink a jar of Nutella. And they put the word out to Jan Ullrich, and he has gone onto social media and he's responded with a jar of Nutella that had been warmed up in a microwave, and he drank some of it. It's been the last couple of days he's done that.
Well, Jan Ullrich, he's made a big presence back on social media. I'm going to show my fanboy status here. I was a big Jan Ullrich fan growing up. That's what got me into cycling, the Lance Armstrong Jan Ullrich battles. So over at the Tour de France last year, starting in Italy, and I happened to run into him. And I don't often get frozen in my in my stance, but I could not believe it. It was big Giannis right in front of me. Shook my hand, and you know what he said to me? "Oh, you're strong. The form is good." I gave him a strong handshake, and I was like, that is the best thing he could have ever have said to me.
Isn't it funny that you're almost 40 years of age, but you go back to that time when you were 13, 14 and falling in love with the sport?
I couldn't believe it. It was a real moment.
You were starstruck.
I was.
I love it.
And even when you're aware of the doping past and the history and so on, when you're 14, you're not aware of that, and it still stays in your mind, that moment when they were your childhood hero.
Yeah, it was, and that was my connection to the sport. I loved the racing, I loved the battles. I wasn't looking at the whole exterior of it. And I loved, look, honestly, I love the aesthetics of it too. I used to love, you know, Team Mobile, the pink kit, and the way they raced the big yarn in the big gear, grinding up the hill, all that stuff, and you know, trying to emulate that when I was out riding. Yeah, for me, that was the start of the journey.
Of falling in love with the sport. This is Victor Campenaerts making his way back through the convoy for Visma Lease a Bike.
And that's what I love about it, is it's happening right now. You know, whether it's the Vuelta a España or the Tour de France that's just passed, there's riders out there watching it, and they're seeing, you know, the battles with Pogacar and Jonas Vingegaard, or right here. You know, we're seeing this battle here with Jonas Vingegaard as well, with João Almeida and Juan Ayuso yesterday. Juan Ayuso was almost riding the big gear like Jan Ullrich back in the day, you know.
It was a big win by Juan Ayuso yesterday, with a colourful celebration, putting his fingers in the ears. I'm not listening to any of the critics. 3:36, still the advantage for the breakaway group of three. Sergio Cementier is the rider who is at the front and setting the tempo. Now that they're out of town, they're back onto the lonely open roads. This is where it gets tough for the breakaway.
And you can see that change of direction through the town as well. So the wind that was coming sort of into a headwind, slightly coming from the left-hand side of the road, is now blowing quite strong from the right. So as they exit the town here and get back onto the open, exposed roads, we may see a bit of changing dynamic in the peloton. We may see things a little bit further strung out.
Well, it's really interesting with the wind, with the sun. This is typical for around this region. And look, one thing I was able to get into when I was over in Spain was the wines. I really loved going, you know what, I'm in the old world of wines. Why not learn a little bit about them? And this region here is Campo de Borja. This is famous for, they call it the Empire of the Grenache, or the Garnacha over here. So they produce a lot of Grenache wines around here. But look, in Spain, Priorat is mainly known for the Grenache. That is because of the age, the soil quality over in Priorat, which is over in the Catalonian region, not too far from Barcelona. That is the primo stuff. But the wine here, the Grenache that they produce here, because of that wind, it allows the vines not to have humidity. There's not a lot of disease around the vines. It is easy to produce. Because of the hot sun, it produces a really rich, ripe grape, a really fruity grape, opposed to the Grenache in Priorat. Priorat is like more of an espresso sort of tasting notes. It's a darker one. You want it with big red chileton meat, whereas this one you want to have it with a jamon, a paella. You want to have it with, you know, some light chicken. There's a big difference in it, yet they're not too far away from each other, and it's really cool to see it. And this is what I loved about riding through these regions. If you knew a little bit about the grape and you took it on board, and when you're riding through it, if you're trying to think about the region, it's very difficult when you see a name of a region on a piece of paper to envision what it is. But if you go, oh, I remember that stage of the Vuelta, it was so hot, it was so windy. Yes, Campo de Borja, I get it.
So you equate your experiences in the crosswind with the grape that was produced in the region?
Some, yes, some negative experiences. Look, we were speaking about Piemonte a little while ago, a couple of days ago, and I specifically remember racing through the Piemonte region, which is the Barolo wines, suffering because of the ups and downs and the vineyards left and right, and I had a negative feeling, but I could always remember exactly what that region was in my mind.
Decathlon AG Tour at the back. That's a team that has built itself around Felix Gall. He was 5th in the Tour de France this year. one of the members from the team, spoke before the stage got underway. That was Sander de Pestel. His role is to look after Felix Gall on these stages, protect him in the crosswinds. He's spoken about the top 5 that he had at the Tour de France, and that's the goal here, and perhaps even with more ambition than the top 5.
Well, I think if a rider's finished top 5 in the Tour de France, they'll be definitely targeting a podium finish in the other Grand Tours of the season. Felix Gall looked to get stronger and stronger throughout the 3 weeks of the Tour. So he looked like he finished in really good shape. Not that 5th place in the general classification, that's his best ever finish in a Grand Tour. So I think he'll, again, take a lot of confidence away from that result onto the Vuelta a España here. He has a team surrounding him, completely focused on supporting him. So I really rate Felix Gall's chances as for a strong result here.
Mitch, take us into the mindset of Sander de Pestel. He is the domestique. He's the man for the flatlands to look after him. How inspiring is it for him when he says before the stage, Felix trusts me?
That's exactly what you want as a domestique. And, you know, look, I really only had that a very few times where doing the same role as Sander is that you don't need to keep continuously looking behind. There's just this continual sort of unspoken relationship. Actually, working with Simon in my very first World Championships in America, over in
Richmond.
In Richmond, thank you, Matt. Look, I was really nervous going there. First World Championship, Simon was going for the win, and you know the team was actually split. A couple guys with Michael Matthews, a couple guys with Simon. My role was to look after Simon all day long, and I just remember at a certain point there was not much more communication because Simon was always in my wheel. He trusted where I wanted to go, where I was going to put him into that final. And that's really inspiring as a rider that, wow, the job that I'm doing is good enough for a leader, and you lift almost to another level. Cool, he trusts where I'm going to put him, and I'm going to just take him where he needs to go.
So how has that lifted the Bahrain victorious riders defending the red jersey?
Well, we can see here that our race leader, Torsten Tran, constantly on the wheel of Jack Haig. And we saw that a lot yesterday, and every time we've seen Torsten Tran in today's stage, he's been on the wheel of the Aussie. So he obviously has a lot of confidence in Haig, and that confidence in Haig is going to increase Haig's ability in this race, and I think we're going to see him lift to a whole new level.
He is enjoying this, Jack Haig. When you look at the expression on his face, and you heard the tone in his voice yesterday when we could eavesdrop on him courtesy of the motorbikes that are out there, this is going to be the beginning of the next phase in the career of Jack Haig.
Yeah, we discussed this early on in the race, you know, long before they had the jerseys. Like Jack Haig thinking about where he may go next. Will he stay there? Will he re-sign? What type of rider is he going to become? Look, he's been 3rd at the Vuelta a España already in the GC capacities. Maybe that ship sailed. I don't know. Maybe he still wanted that. And now this is maybe carving out this next step for him. It's really cool. It's amazing how things just happen for a reason, isn't it?
Bruno Amorai, he's another rider who's carving out the next phase of his career. He's been brilliant the last couple of seasons. A lot to like about the trajectory of his career, and he's in his early 30s and he's continuing to improve. The sanctuary of Loreto on the outskirts of Huesca. It is barren, dry land here by comparison to what we saw 48 hours ago. Stage 8 of the Volta a España, and the breakaway group of 3, they have made the decision. It's time to pin the ears back, see if we can get underneath the radars of the teams of the sprinters, and they are extending their lead.
Well, it's a long way to go to play that card, to show that you got good legs in the breakaway. As Mitch identified a few kilometres ago, they should be sitting back and playing a bit more of a patient game. But in saying that, the fact that they hit a finish circuit once they get to Zaragoza, they go through the finish line with 23 kilometres to go. So there's going to be a big battle into Zaragoza. So they are going to need to go and make this move a little bit further out than normal.
Well, Mads Pedersen, he spoke before the stage got started, and he said it's helpful to pass through the finish line when this is a race where he hasn't done a lot of recon in preparation for the Volta a España. He also made the statement, he was asked the question about how he was recovered from yesterday. He said, yeah, I've recovered, and you know, I'm not doing bike races to finish second. He's out for the win today, Mads Pedersen.
Well, he'll definitely put it out there, but it is advantageous for these riders to do a finishing circuit, because they hit that finishing circuit with just under 3 kilometres to go before the finish line. So those last lead-out riders, they have the luxury of getting a look at the finish before they really have to step up and perform. There was a stage of the Volta a España that finished into Zaragoza 2 years ago, and it looks as though it's on exactly the same finish as back then. So undoubtedly, the entire peloton, they would have been on YouTube, they would have been watching the replays of that finish a couple of years ago.
And Mads Pedersen spoke about using VeloViewer to be able to take a look at the approach to the finish line on the team bus. That's been a big change, Simon, from when you started in the professional peloton in 2005 to when you retired and further progressed to now.
Yeah, it was a huge change in technology over the duration of my career, and I think it's gone even further since I stepped out of the peloton. The access to the information that these riders have is phenomenal. So they can definitely go back, look at the archives of races, watch the replays of previous stage finishes, but then they have the likes of Google Maps, they have VeloViewer, so they can really analyse the roads ahead before each and every stage.
Well, the news has come through to the peloton about the increase of the tempo in the breakaway, and now Emmanuel Gabriel from Leader Trek has been given the orders. Emmanuel, it's time to go to the fronts.
That's interesting. I thought they might have stayed away from the front of the peloton today and played that card. I spoke about it before that. The Mads Pedersen, he said, well, look, he hasn't quite been up there. If you look at Pedersen, the 3 sprint stages, he's finished 14th, 2nd and 6th. So, look, he has been up there, but I don't feel like they need to ride today. It's well under control, and they could come in later.
If they don't ride, do they run the risk of the breakaway surviving?
No. I don't think so. Not with these 3 riders, and it's, 3 minutes. They've only used 2 riders to chase so far.
So I think Lidl Trek have started to put riders in the front just to sort of show their presence at the front of the race and to show they still have confidence in Mads Pedersen. Mads isn't a rider that falters under pressure. In fact, he's the kind of rider that steps up when his team get on the front and really show that they back him for a result in the stage. So I think that's a part of why Lidl Trek are putting riders in the front. They want to show Mads that they have the confidence in him that he can deliver the win today.
Here's a look at the breakaway once again. The ride at the front from Burgos, that is Jose Luis Fora. He starts the day at 27 minutes and 16 seconds behind the red jersey. At the back for the Cofidis team, Sergio Sametier. He's the best placed in the general classification from the breakaway. He's at 8 minutes and 56 seconds down. And in the green and white colours for Cajaral, it's Juan Bo who's in the move. He is the furthest behind in the overall standings. 50 minutes and 17 seconds. This move has nothing to do with positions in the general classification. It's all about trying to upstage the sprinters and win the day. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen occasionally.
Well, there's 2 motivations really for these riders who are up the road or the 3 riders who are up the road in today's stage. When you look to the riders from Burgos, BH and Cajaral, it's all about justifying their invitation to this Volta a España. The fact that this race is live on TV for around 3 hours, it's fantastic for their sponsors to get up there on TV to justify their sponsorship of these teams. For Sametier, the fact that he's racing through his hometown, it's so rare that you get the opportunity to do that as a professional cyclist, particularly if you come from a small village in the middle of Aragon. It'd be rare that the Volta a España passes through there, so what a fantastic opportunity for him.
Okay, on the topic of the motivation of his hometown, if this was the same course profile and it was 300 kilometres away, nowhere near his hometown, would Sergio Samitier be in the breakaway today?
No.
Absolutely not.
No, absolutely not.
We got it in stereo. The answer is no.
No. You know what? I'd do the exact same thing. I would love to be up the road. Look, unless I was a sprinter trying to win today's stage, if I had nothing else really to do, 100% I'd be up the road.
Cabrazabia at the front. He's been the breakaway killer for the Liedhout Trek team. He has been doing an outstanding job in support of Mads Pedersen. They've got other jobs to do as well, as we see the Zupa Duper in action here from Tobias, trying and make sure he doesn't overheat. Tobias Bayer. For Liedhout Trek, so far, Giulio Ciccone has been either the second or third strongest rider on the climbs.
At 30 years of age, are we going to see a breakthrough general classification result for Ciccone here at the Vuelta?
Yes, I believe we will. I believe he's going to finish inside the top 10 for the first time in his career. I'm confident he can finish inside the top 5. I'm not confident that he can finish second or first. He might, at best, be able to finish third.
Well, if we draw a line at this point in the Vuelta, this is the best we've seen him in the first week of a Grand Tour. He is right up there. He hasn't faltered. He's gone with the absolute best in the business on each of the climbs. So for me, Ciccone is looking great for that top 10 finish.
He's also been working a little bit for Mads Pedersen, like not a lot, but he's still been doing small lead-outs in the finals and on the uphill finals. So hasn't just been sitting there in an armchair with the whole team around him wrapped up in cotton wool. He's just been getting involved.
Here's this reservoir that we're now taking a look at. This was built in the 1920s. Yeah, he's played the team role as well as looking after himself, and he's been the one rider that's prepared to attack Jonas Vingegaard. Golf clap from the spectator on the side of the road, Mitch.
Oh, the crowds are coming out in hordes, aren't they? It's a good spot to watch the race today on the side of this road.
Well, it looks like the lady that's got the white car there, she potentially is on this property, has just driven down to the edge of the property to watch the Vuelta come past.
You see what this is what happens in Spain. Why you do get these crosswinds, because you've got these large plateaus where it sits up a little bit higher. And again, to go back to what I was talking about before about the grapes, it's about 600 metres in altitude here. And it's this little high plateau. It's on a mountain. They're on this big plateau, and it cops a lot of wind up here. This was earmarked as a crosswind day. And I think the race organisers probably anticipated it to be a little bit more eventful than it is. But that's just down to the weather gods, really. It's a shame for us. I wish it was blowing a gale.
It has blown a gale here in the past. And these three are working really well together. They've rolled the dice early by picking up the pace. Did they go too soon with increasing the tempo?
I think they have gone too soon because there's been an immediate reaction back in the peloton. When you increase the tempo from the breakaway, ultimately what you want to do is you want to catch the peloton napping, and you want to build up more of an advantage that they can't peg back before the final. At 83 kilometres to go on the stage, there is still so much time for the peloton to react, to speed up, to close this gap down to the break of 3.
Here is a look back at the peloton leader. Trek have decided that it's time for them to go to the front and assist with the chasing. Bahrain Victorious, we've spoken a bit already about Jack Haig, and we heard it yesterday after the stage from their team leader, the race leader, Torsten Trun, about how important the role is that Jack Haig is playing for the team. And he mentioned the ankle injury for Jack Haig. He had the big crash at the Tour de France on the stage that went to the Mer de Bretagne, recovered from that, then went to the Tour of Poland, and on a stage in the Tour of Poland, the Jayco Alula team car came to a grinding halt in front of him. Jack went through the rear view windscreen, and then another rider hit him from behind, and it was that rider's handlebars that went into the calf and ankle of Jack Haig, which has caused the problem. He's coping with it pretty well, and he is rising to the occasion of helping defend the red jersey. It's been a very impressive opening week from Jack Haig.
It has been, yeah, the Australian, not really in Australia much anymore. Look, I remember when Jack Haig first moved to Europe, he's a bit of a lone wolf. He's okay with it. You know, a lot of Australians do struggle with that, me included, that trip across to Europe, settling in, homesick, trying to find your feet. Not Haigie. he didn't come back for the first 4 years. He went across, stayed there, did all the winters, and that was it. He was in Europe. Now, I sort of really respected him that he was able to do that. I couldn't do that myself. I needed the refresh back in Oz. But Hagee was just like, nah, I'm here now. I'm in Europe, set up base, and let's go.
He's only been back three or four times since he turned professional. He went close to 4 years recently without coming back.
Yeah, he's settled up. He's settled in. He's got a family there now. He's got a wife from Spain as well. So, or Andorra, actually, sorry. So, look, they're settled in.
And is that part of what is required to make it, to not be still living partly back in Australia, not following your local football team or whatever it may be and really embracing life over there?
Well, I think you've got to be comfortable living over there. I think there's nothing wrong with still having connections back to Australia and still following football teams and the likes, but you've got to be content with living over Europe. If you get over to Europe and you get homesick and all you're thinking about is going back to Australia at the end of the season, if you're just counting the days till you get to go home and see your friends and family again, you're never going to be completely comfortable in Europe and you're never going to be happy there. So I don't think there's anything wrong with coming back each year, but you absolutely have to embrace the European way of life and the culture of living over there.
I 100% agree, Simon. Look, and I think there's a switch, you know, when you first move across over there. Look, I'll speak from my own personal experience, is that you don't know if it's going to be the first Neo-Pro contract or you're going to be there for 10 years. So it's really difficult to set up thinking, yeah, I'm here for 10 years. I'm really going to commit to this. There comes a point in your career where you have to make that decision and you have to make it feel like home.
Well, for myself personally, I used to really look forward to going back to Australia at the end of every season. But come to the end of the Australian summer, I was hanging out to get back to Europe again. So I really liked bouncing between Australia and Europe. I moved over to Europe as a 19-year-old, and I moved back when I was 40.
I read a great quote recently. Success is being excited to go to work and excited to go home. And you two both nailed it. Here's a look at the peloton with Bahrain Victorious riding well up towards the front. No need for them to defend the red jersey today. They can sit patiently in the peloton. The tempo has increased significantly the last 10 minutes, up to 44 k's per hour. Gentle change of direction and the wind ever so slightly more favourable.
Yeah, a little nudge from behind here will help the peloton get in. And look, actually, oh, here we go.
On the far side from UAE, the winner of the stage yesterday, Juan Ayuso. Behind him, Jay Vine in the King of the Mountains jersey. Here is Ben O'Connor. Ben O'Connor being looked after towards the front. Kel O'Brien doing an outstanding job for him. The chatter continues about Juan Ayuso and where will he be next year, despite the fact he has a contract with his current team to the end of 2028.
But those contracts, it doesn't feel like they're worth the paper they're written on a lot of the times when you see riders constantly breaking contracts and teams actually dumping riders mid-contract as well. There's reports of outlandish figures of a buyout clause in Juan Ayuso's contract to leave UAE Team Emirates. I don't think it would be the case, and I don't think it's, again, those buyout clauses are really worth much at all.
Yeah, the rumour is around $100 million buyout clause, which is utterly ridiculous. For some of the smaller teams, though, signing a rider to a longish contract, as we saw with the Androni team, they did it with Egan Bernal, and then Ineos bought him out of that contract. That's how a small team like that survives for so long, is finding a superstar, unearthed 19-year-old, and then having their contract bought out by a bigger team.
Well,
much like smaller football clubs, you know, a bottom-end Premier League football club getting players bought out by the big teams.
Yeah, well, you don't sort of have transfer fees in professional cycling like what I understand they do in football. But Mitch, your old team and what is now Picnic Coast NL, they were famous there for a few years of scouting out young talent, signing them on long contracts, and then letting them be bought out by the bigger budget teams. Famously, it was the Swiss rider. Mark Hirschi, exactly. Mark Hirschi did that. I think maybe, I'm not sure if Marcel Kittel was ever bought out of his contract in the team. But
Dumoulin was?
Yes, Tom Dumoulin. So there were a number of riders who were bought out of their contracts within that team, and that really bolstered the team's budget. Yeah,
well, look, I didn't know too much about that side of things, but I just know how well they are, how good they are at finding new talent. They're continually doing it. Look at Van Uden here at this race, and great sprinter who is getting unearthed, and now we obviously know all about him, but they're really, really good. They continually do it, continually find this great talent, and whether they're getting bought out, they get them at a good price, and they always produce great results for them.
And speaking of young talent, it's just been the conclusion, Matt, of Tour de l'Avenir.
A really exciting race, and the French, they've got every right to get excited because the young French rider, Paul Seychelles, he was the winner of the men's Tour de l'Avenir, and he was a fair way down midway through the race. He showed his class, and in the last couple of stages, he clawed back an enormous amount of time. And Simon, the final individual time trial, 10 kilometres uphill the whole way, you were blown away by the power data that the young Frenchman produced.
Yeah, reportedly, Seychelles there put out 6.63 watts per kilo for the duration of that 10-kilometre mountain time trial. So for those of you at home who have a power meter on your bike, just run the numbers. Times your body weight by 6.63 kilos and see if you can maintain that kind of power for 25 minutes. If you can, you need to be in the professional peloton.
They were huge numbers. So Paul Seychelles, he won the Tour de l'Avenir. Jarno Veda was in second position. Jorgen Nordhagen was in third. The best of the Australians was Luke Tuckwell. He finished in 10th place. The women's Tour de l'Avenir, that was also run at exactly the same time. And in that race, it was the Canadian Isabelle Holmgren who took out the victory. Marion Burnell, the young French rider who won it last year, she finished in second position. And the Aussie from Mansfield, your hometown, Talia Appleton, finished third. Great result.
Oh, I'm so pleased for Talia, and so great to have some more cyclists sort of coming out of Mansfield. Talia, I do remember her from a very young age getting involved in the local group rides and then doing some of the local club races, and now she's making a mark on the world scene.
And she was very impressive earlier this year as well in the Pro Velo Super League. She didn't quite get the win. She was close. She finished in second position, but she has a very bright future. The breakaway, how bright is its future? Jose Luis Ferreira is the rider at the back of the group from Burgos. In the middle is John Ball from Cajaral. And for the Movistar team, the most experienced campaigner from the breakaway, it is Sergio Semetier. Had a long stint with the Movistar team, has since gone across to Cofidis and has a 3-year contract with the French outfit. Peloton turning the screws also. The average speed for the last 10 minutes, it's moved up to 44 kilometres per hour after a first hour where it was a very pedestrian 36 k's per hour.
It's the barren flat roads out here, and look, the wind has been favourable for them now, giving them a little gentle push crosswind, cross tail, so a bit easier to get the pace up. But yeah, as you can see, it's well and truly under control. Just 3 riders controlling at the front from 3 different teams there. Israel Premier Tech, Lidl Trek, and of course Alpecin de Koenig. So it's 3 versus 3 at the moment.
And a team that is not at the front and not contributing is Ineos Grenadiers, and they were the winners of stage 4 with the sprinter, with Ben Turner. Should they contribute? Should they sit back and just keep doing what they're doing?
I think they should just sit back and keep doing what they're doing. Within that squad, they're obviously riding the general classification in support of Egan Bernal. They have some great riders in the team that will take their own opportunities in this race, the likes of Magnus Sheffield, the likes of Mikhail Kwiatkowski, as well Filippo Ganna. He'll be looking forward to the next individual time trial. But Ben Turner, I feel like that was a real breakthrough result, his stage win a couple of days ago there. I don't think today's stage is ideally suited for Turner. I think he needs a bit more of a challenging final.
One team that maybe could get involved would be Elia Viviani's team. Look, he was 4th in the first sprint stage. And it was really interesting to hear him speak at the start of the stage. He was saying, you know, he really likes to finish today. He wants to get inside that 2K to go. That's his finish line for the team. To get him inside that 2K to go, if he can get there, and he'll be happy to go forward to the line.
I'm looking forward to seeing what Viviani can do. He is at the back end of his career. He's on a 1-year contract. He's 36 years of age, and he did not sign this contract until January. He went into the off-season without a team lined up.
I think it was late January he signed the contract. So the season was actually underway. So Team Lotto, and it's just not the first time they've done this. They threw Viviani a lifeline, probably threw him a minimum wage deal, and Viviani was happy to take it just to stay at the highest level of the sport.
Simon Clark got thrown a lifeline in January and then went on to win a stage in the Tour de France.
Well, Simon Clarke, he's riding for Israel Premier Tech in his final year of his career, but he's actually going to tap on a little bit extra. He's going to finish off in the Australian summer season, so he'll be doing Tour Down Under and Cadel Evans' race as well.
Great way for him to finish his career. This is his team now on the front. It's George Bennett now who's taken over the pacemaking at the front. Great way for Clarkey to finish his career with the Tour Down Under and the Cadel Evans Great Ocean Road Race. Yeah,
I think he'll be very excited to round out his career on home soil, and he's actually in an ideal position to keep his form going off the back end of the season, knowing that he doesn't have to maintain form for an entire another season. He'll have a really short break undoubtedly at the end of the year, maybe only just a few days, and then start his preparation for January.
It's quite interesting because, Simon, when we were in the comm box together for the Giro d'Italia, we were talking a lot about Simon. We were trying to get some insights from him because he was in that race. We're not getting much from him. Not really normal from Clarkey not to give us much. I was speaking to him recently. I said, Clarkey, what was going on in the Giro? He goes, I just wasn't on a good one. It felt like it was one Grand Tour too far for me. So I think that's not a bad feeling to have as a pro if you decided to retire. And you really do feel, yeah, that's it. Not going, maybe I should have done one more year. No, he really knows that this is the right time.
Well, you and I have both gone through this, Mitch. When you know in your mind it's your last season, it hurts. Every race you line up in, you tend to suffer that little bit more. So I think for Simon Clarke, he would have known in his mind this is his last season. The Giro d'Italia was likely going to be his last Grand Tour, and he suffered his way through. And we've seen the same of Geraint Thomas this year as well. He was at the Tour de France, and he looked like he copped a belting. And this is the guy who was podium in Grand Tours just the year before.
Yeah, the year prior was third in the Giro d'Italia, so it's not as if he petered out at the end of his career, Geraint Thomas. Looking forward to seeing what he does next. A lot of rumours about him moving into a management role at Ineos Grenadiers. This is Gabra up at the front for the Liddell Trek team. Has carved out a career for himself in this role.
Well, sorry, Mitch, every sprinter needs teammates like this. Every sprinter needs riders within their team that have the ability to sit on the front of the peloton and drag back breakaways again. So Gabra, he plays a very important role for the Liddell Trek and Mads Pedersen.
73 kilometres remain in the breakaway. They've had their advantage reeled back in slightly. It's down to 3:27, and the red jersey is joined another day at the top of the general classification. Torsten Thrun watching his teammates protect him. But this is one for the fast finishers as they head towards Zaragoza.
I'm going to need a job.
If it's us against Eamon, there's only going to be one outcome.
Then we have to be smarter.
You've no idea what you've started. You and your idiot son, you're all done.
All of us
Especially together.
are better. Not because we are the
Same. But because we are all different.
Stage 8 of the Volta a España. They're heading towards Zaragoza. It is the teams of Alpecin-Deceuninck, Israel Premier Tech and Leader Trek. They're doing the containing of the breakaway. 70 kilometres to go. The maximum lead that we've seen out in front was a smidgen over 4 minutes. It's now down to 3 minutes and 17 seconds. For the Arkea B&B team, they'll be sprinting today with Gunther Behrmans, and one of their sports directors, Sebastian Hinault, his only ever stage victory in a Grand Tour was into Zaragoza back in 2008, and Simon Guerin, Sebastian, was an old teammate of yours.
In 2008, he won a stage of the Vuelta a España with Credit Agricole.
Yeah, into Zaragoza.
I was his teammate, and I don't even remember that.
There you go.
He very quickly went on from a rider to being a sports director, Sebastian Hinault, and he's one of those guys who's never stepped out of the peloton. I think from rider to sports director, 1 year to the next, and he's still on the circuit so many years later.
And the most common question he's asked, are you related to Bernard Hinault? He comes from the same area as well, and the answer is no.
Oh, right. Is that right?
He is a Breton. His first season in the pro peloton was in 1996, and he closed out his season by riding the Herald Sun Tour.
Well, back when it was at the end of the year. Herald Fun Tour used to be called.
And it's returning in 2026, and it's going to be at the beginning of February. Simon Gerrans was the winner of that race in 2005, and Mitch Docker was one of his teammates. We've reunited them in the commentary box. It was a big moment for you. Mitch, you were 18 years of age then?
Yeah, I was in my last year of school, so yeah, I was actually I might have just turned 18. My birthday's in October, so yeah. I was still feel how special that was for me, because that moment that you want to be in the kit. Look, it's back to the kit. I remember when we got the kit, like to be wearing full-on AG2R Pro kit. I was just like, what is this? But then, like the caliber riders, I didn't actually know how good those riders were until later I was in Europe. The riders we had on that team, Nico Portal, Erky Putstep, we had also Andy Flickinger, Simon, and the guy who retired there,
Christophe Auriel.
Christophe Auriel. Like, it was just like a rock star team. And the thing that I took away from that was, and only in reflection, how cool and calm they were, and the advice that they passed on to me wasn't like, do this or do that. It was like, I just absorbed it by being around them. And they were really relaxed, yet they got the job done. And that was just a pro, you know?
It was your first year in the pro peloton, and it was a chance for you to be the leader. How important was that as a step in your career?
Oh, it was a huge step, and I was really fortunate when I turned professional in 2005 with AG2R. The team actually wasn't at the highest level of the sport back then. It was the equivalent of Division 2 team. So back then, the highest level of the sport was called Pro Tour, and the next level down, it might have been called just Pro Team or something like that. So AG2R, they were that second level team. They got invitations to all the big French races, and then they could pick and choose what sort of races they put their hand up for outside of that. So I was really fortunate that in my first year pro, I had the opportunity to do some smaller French races. I also got selected to compete in the Tour de France. And then off the back of the Tour de France, I really carried some good form onto the back end of the season and managed to win a few races. Then I convinced Vincent Lavenu, the general manager of the team, to send a team out to Australia so I could compete in what was my home race, the Herald Sun Tour.
And then to round it out, John Beasley was managing the team, an important figure in both of your careers, and your now wife Rana had a big role to play on the race that year.
Yeah, funnily enough, Rana was working in sort of logistics or as an assistant to John and the team to organise everything for that week. And reflecting on it now, as a neo-pro, I can't believe that Vincent Lavenu allowed me to take a team out to Australia, choose a sports director in John Beasley, and a couple of, well, 3 young Aussie riders actually to come onto the team as stagiaires so I could compete in my home race. So he gave me a huge amount of confidence and really backed me those early years of my career.
And Vincent, it was justified. Simon won. Down to 3 minutes now, the advantage for the breakaway. Jose Luis Ferrer at the front for the Borgas team. All but one rider on this team, Mitch, are riding a Grand Tour for the first time. So there's no one with real experience. And the rider who has ridden a Grand Tour previously, Fagundes, he's ridden one. He's ridden the Vuelta. That was 2 years ago.
Well, they're going to be all going through, I guess, the same emotions, the roller coaster emotions. They'll be going the highs and the lows. They'll be feeling the fatigue at the same time. It's all uncharted territory. It's not going to be able to go to someone and go, don't worry, this is what you expected to feel. They will be like, well, let's just see what happens tomorrow.
Well, a massive portion of the peloton would be in that situation. I was looking through the numbers of how many riders are actually qualified for the young rider jersey, the white jersey here at the Vuelta a España. And it's 36% of the peloton in the race is in that category. So a huge portion of the race here are young riders, and I imagine a large number of them are making their Grand Tour debut here at the Vuelta a España.
Well, the young rider competition is something really interesting to talk about in this race, because we've got the rider here, the American rider, Matthew Riccatello, who is sort of moving up the ranks, and there's a good opportunity for him. At the moment, the white jersey sits on Julio Pellizzari's shoulders. Well, Riccatello's another rider who can be up there floating around for that jersey. I'm wondering how that's going to play out. It's actually one of the interesting battles in this race, obviously apart from the red jersey, but I think the white jersey is going to be a good one to follow.
Well, for Riccatello, he doesn't have a general classification in the team, a rider in the team that he needs to support. He can completely focus on his own race and that white jersey. For Pellizzari, the white jersey is secondary to supporting Jai Hindley. So Riccatello is in a really good position and has a fantastic opportunity to win a distinctive jersey in this Vuelta.
And he did look very good yesterday. Small church that we can see nowhere near town, perched at the top of the hill, got beautiful views out across the rolling plains. As a comparison, for the best young rider classification at the Vuelta a España, there's 65 or so riders in that classification. At the Tour de France, it was 45. And for a number of years, we were seeing the white jersey also win the yellow jersey with Tadej Pogačar, but now at 26, he's aged out of that classification. Back on board with the breakaway.
Well, these three riders really look to be sharing the workload in the breakaway. And as with only three, it becomes pretty obvious if you aren't sort of putting in your fair share of work in a group like this. But the three Spanish riders here, they look to be very cohesive and working well together.
Well, typically what you want to do, well, what I used to do myself, is you'd pick a distance or a time on your head unit and you know, sort of measure that. Cool, we're doing 1 kilometre turns or whatever it is, and just sort of use that as a bit of a marker. And when you notice then if someone was pulling a shorter turn, three of you want to keep it pretty even.
Would you say something? Would you say something to the rider you thought was only doing 800 metres on the front?
I probably would, yeah.
I don't doubt it. Gabor Xavier is doing plenty at the front for this group. The riders from UAE Team Emirates, they're keeping themselves all well and truly packed together. Juan Ayuso today is riding his 50th stage in his career at the Vuelta a España. We've spoken a bit about the fact that he finished on the podium when he made his debut in the race. That was a few years ago now in 2022 when he finished in third position. He was just the second teenager in the history of the sport to finish on the podium in a Grand Tour. And you have to go all the way back to the Tour de France, the winner of the Tour de France in 1904, Henry Cornet, to have achieved that. So it bears no resemblance to modern day cycling. So he is in a unique position that post World War II, in the modern era of cycling, he's the only teenager to have made the podium in a Grand Tour.
So it took nearly 120 years.
Yes. He's won the white jersey in this race for 28 stages throughout his career. At the back of the peloton, this is the sprinter for EF Education EasyPost, Matis Michels. They don't have a rider for the general classification. Michels is not one of the top tier sprinters. I'm anticipating that we're going to see a lot more of EF Education EasyPost in breakaways, but they'll be very selective about the days they go in them.
Well, for that team, when they're at a race without Richard Carapaz, it really feels like that's the card they're playing. They're playing the underdogs, the wild card, sort of opportunist sort of team that select the days that they go on the breakaway and try and win. Carapaz is obviously their big star, their big team leader who has a proven track record of racing GC, but it really feels like he's the only rider within that squad.
Yeah. Often it does feel like that's the case. Look at the last 20 minutes. And the breakaway, they're only marginally slower than the peloton. They're doing a great job of maintaining this gap.
They are, but look, it is still 62 kilometres to go, and there's nothing really that's going to help them on this run-in terms of tricky corners or town passings or things like that. They're pretty open run-in, so look, the peloton has got it under control, and you know, if they need to, they can always send 1 or 2 more riders up to assist in the chase.
We're beginning to see a bit more movement from the back of the peloton. They're no longer strung out in single file, just in a pace line. There's the beginning of the fight for position, even though there is 62k still to race.
Well, they may be coming up to a bit more open, sort of exposed section of parkour as well. And basically every team in this race are going to have a car driving ahead of the race and scouting the road ahead for any sort of dangerous sections of road. So they will have done a lot of pre-stage analysis to look at the wind direction, to look on Velo Viewer or Google Maps to see where it could be dangerous with the wind, but you get a much better feel for it when you're on the road itself. So that advanced course car, the car that's ahead of the race for each team, they would have identified key sections where the teams need to be at the front because it could be dangerous.
Yeah, they're not about to make any significant turn. You can see the part of the course that they're on now. They're heading towards the intermediate sprint. They still have a few kilometres to go before they get there, but they are getting into, as you described, more open, exposed roads.
One thing that you often see is a breakaway hold off a chasing peloton on a finished circuit. When the circuit is a little bit more technical, there's a bit more stop-start, you find a breakaway can carry better speed or really good speed through those finishing circuits, get a little bit closer to the TV motorbikes ahead of them, and take advantage of a bit of a slipstream from the vehicles ahead of the race. So when you think about it, they're going to hit that finished circuit in today's stage, add around 25 kilometres to go, which is 35 kilometres time. They have 2 minutes and 43 seconds. There's every chance that this breakaway will hit those finishing circuits in front of the peloton. So if they do that, they will have the slightest glimmer of hope of holding off this chasing bunch.
Well, they're definitely going to make it to the intermediate sprint ahead of the peloton because there's less than 20 k's to go to there. It is 18 kilometres before they go through the intermediate sprint.
I agree with you, Simon, and I think what they need to do, though, is save that effort for a little bit longer. If they're actually starting to dip into that, what are they going to increase when they get to the circuit? Look, I remember back in 2012, my first Vuelta, it was a single rider we could not get back on the final circuit, was Tony Martin. And he was just because of that. Obviously, Tony Martin, very strong rider, but the whole peloton was stopping and starting. We were jostling for positions. We couldn't get an organised chase in. And Tony Martin, he was moving around that final circuit and he took it out.
He won by 4 seconds, for memory.
Yeah, it was frightfully close. We were working for the sprinter Alan Davis in the Green Edge at that point, and I remember it was just another stage that slipped away.
Brilliant time trialist Tony Martin, a multiple world champion against the clock. The break of 3, still trying desperately to defy the odds, working brilliantly together. Juan Bau is the rider at the front for Caja, a team that has been represented in most of the breakaways throughout this year's race. The shining light for them has been Joao Nicolau, who was in the break yesterday and has had 2 days in the King of the Mountains jersey. An all-Spanish affair out in front in the breakaway. Tempo has increased significantly after a slow start, just 36 kilometres per hour, the average speed throughout the first hour. The average speed now for the last 20 minutes, close to 50 k's per hour. The average speed now for the stage has bumped up to almost 41 kilometres per hour.
See, Bahrain Victoria is still sitting quite close to the front of the peloton, showing their presence there, showing that they have the race lead. I don't see the red jersey being very close to the front of the peloton right now. So Torsten Trunz still sitting a little bit further back in the group, undoubtedly with Jack Haig by his side. But in yesterday's stage, the rider they came into this race looking to protect, Antonio Tiberi, lost a significant chunk of time. And I wonder the Italian, whether he's been thrown a little bit by his Norwegian teammate, outperforming him so far in the general classification.
No, because he finished 67th and he was at 14 minutes and 51 seconds down. If he was a couple of minutes behind, if he was at 2 or 3 minutes, yes, but at 14 minutes, that's a whole lot more than being thrown by having another teammate in the leader's jersey. I put that down to the preparation not quite going to plan.
I was wondering more on the other side of things, whether his head rolled off psychologically.
Completely.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Toys out of the cot?
Yep, toys out of the cot, and didn't like it, and just sort of like, you know what am I even doing here? I thought I had the whole team behind me.
I don't think that was the case, because the whole team was working for a leader and he would benefit from that. He was never called upon to do any of the pacemaking at the front. He was sitting behind the red jersey throughout the stage, so he had the same level of support from the team.
So he had the armchair ride. He could have been sitting on the back of Tran's wheel and really thinking that the team was riding for him, or riding in that way, thinking, yeah, we're at the front here, I've got a great sit. The team are riding in support of the red jersey, but he could really benefit for that. The other rider who really blew out in the general classification yesterday, showing he's consistently inconsistent, David Gaudu.
81st on the stage yesterday, David Gaudu. He was in the same group at 14 minutes and 51 seconds down, and we rode him off during the Giro. We didn't expect anything from him at the Vuelta. He wins a stage, beating Mads Pedersen in a sprint finish. He looks good on the first mountain stage. The hopes are up. David Gaudu is back. Oliver Knight, he's out of the race, unfortunately, for the Cofidis team. But we thought Gaudu was back. He's been a 4th place finisher in the Tour de France. Maybe he can challenge. He's now completely out of contention.
Yeah, it was unscripted from what I could see. Everything was going good. And also, you remember they put in a great ride in the team's time trial as well. So, look, there was positive moving forward. Yeah, I'd like to know what happened there, why things went that way, and maybe that's just following suit with David Gaudu.
Well, maybe he came down ill as well. We really don't know. We're speculating what could have gone wrong for David Gaudu. But it is strange to see a rider who looks to be on absolute top of their form, best we've seen for a period of time, lose a significant chunk of time on a stage where there was a huge number together still at the finish.
We spoke about it yesterday before they hit the mountain, and the conversation we had was, would you want David Gaudu kicking for goal with your life depending on it after the siren? And we all unanimously said no. Breakaway, they've gone from having a 4 minutes and 20-second advantage now down to 2:38. Big day out for Sergio Sametier. He's the rider at the front. He's the local rider from this region. It's going to be hard to get the most combative prize away from him. And for the Cofidis team, they haven't had a single thing to cheer about in the Volta so far.
Well, there is still plenty of racing to go in this Vuelta for a team like Team Cofidis, a team where all the riders have lost pretty significant time in the general classification. The best placed rider in the team is, in fact, Sametier. He is sitting at in 28th place in the general classification before today's stage, a shade under 9 minutes down. But for the rest of the team, they're here absolutely chasing stage wins. Well,
one of those riders who could do very well today is Anton Alski, the Polish rider, who has actually performed okay in the sprints. I expected a bit more from him. He was 18th in the first sprint. The uphill sprint he didn't feature, but the last flattish sprint he was 12th, so just outside the top 10. I think he'll be floating a little bit further up today. I'm not going to say he's going to win today, but I think top 5 is possible.
Watch this space. He and Brian Coquard, I wonder if they can get themselves organised and work together, or do they independently do their own thing? Almost 300 kilometres now in the red jersey for Thorsten Tran.
Mitch, for the riders who are looking to do their own thing in their sprint finish, there's those riders with a fast finish that aren't the big favourites to take the stage. Is it more advantageous for them to be finishing on a circuit rather than if they were belting down this big wide road and straight up finishing in Zaragoza?
Yeah, well, I think so, because they can get their position. Well, let's have a look at it here. They're going to see the finish, which is also advantage for both, for the lead-outs and for the rider, but also once they get that position on a tricky finish, they can manoeuvre easier on their own. Manoeuvre through the bunch, hold their position easier. On these big roads here, just say they were finishing in the next kilometre, you can see it's a straight road. You really need that lead-out train, that horsepower to move you up and keep you up in the position. So I think the finish today will be a messy one, and it will suit one-out riders. We've already mentioned Michaels from EF as well. He's going to be riding one out today. James Shaw going to be dropping in probably in a position, and from there he'll be going.
That was the Arco de la Mora that we had a brief chance to take a look at. That was built back in the Middle Ages. 12 kilometres to the intermediate sprint. The breakaway group of 3, 2.5 minutes ahead of the peloton.
We're looking for two boys, and I think those boys stumbled across a monster.
Dark Winds. Stream free on SBS On Demand.
All of us
Especially together.
are better. Not because we are the
Same. But because we are all different.